Your relationship with money matters. I'm Michelle Perkins, and this is the Money and You podcast, where I will be breaking down your relationship with money, offering tough love money tips, and a money dating plan that will focus on lifting the barriers to success to help pave the way for better money practices and increased wealth. It's time to take control to live a limit-free life. It starts today. Hello. This is Michelle Perkins. I'm the host of the Money and You show, brought to you by ubngo.com. And I am so excited about today's show. You are going to love today's guest. And I've been listening to her podcast for the last day and this morning and really enjoying it. We're going to have a really interesting conversation about a lot of different things around money. As you know, if you've been listening at all, this show is about your relationship with money, as well as some practical tips around money, all kinds of everything around money. I was at a terrific brunch yesterday morning in Malibu for the She Angels Foundation, which I discovered through one of my other podcast guests, Catherine Gray, and joined their foundation. And we had a lovely time yesterday giving out a grant to a nonprofit that is going to help women over 40, to create their films and entertainment. It was really cool. And there was a woman who flew in from Fargo, is it North Dakota? I think it's North Dakota. All right, let me check. Hang on. Yeah, this is embarrassing to not know. Yes, North Dakota. Okay, so anyway, she had a really cool job. She was the Executive Vice President, Chief Culture Officer at a bank called Bell Bank. And Bell Bank did a really interesting thing, and I love to learn about companies that do really cool things, and then I love to share this information because I think it gives other business owners great ideas, and it's just something that should be celebrated. But this bank gives every employee, and they had over 1,800 employees, $1,000 every year to give away to charity. And it's an honor system kind of situation, and they just expect that people will choose whatever their favorite charities are and give this money away. But it gives the employees a chance to do this. And she was talking about just the overall good feeling and morale boosting, and just it was something that was enlightening to the employees who maybe hadn't had a chance to do this on that level. And I just thought it was the coolest thing. So anyway, just wanted to kind of mention that and see if that sparked any good feeling in you. Okay, so without further ado, I really want to jump in and introduce Shannah Compton-Game. And let me just tell you a little about her before we get into a really cool discussion. Shannah Compton-Game is a money wellness expert, certified financial planning professional with an MBA, and she's on a mission to revolutionize how you think, act, and feel about your money. She's host to the highly ranked iTunes podcast, which is featured as one of the top 5 money podcasts by New York Times, Millennial Money, and has listeners in 164 countries and over 17 million downloads. Aside from her podcast, Shannah is the CEO of Hello, It's Me, and creator of one-of-a-kind money mindset journal, which I'm very excited to see. Shannah is also a sought-after financial writer and speaker, and her financial expertise has been highlighted in articles for Women's Health, MSN Money, Reuters, Bankrate.com, Refinery 29, Yahoo Finance, Apartment Therapy, and Real Simple, to name a few. Shannah is also a lecturer in finance at Cal State University Northridge, where she created her own signature financial literacy curriculum. Millennial Money has helped millions of listeners pay off well over $2 million in student loan and credit card debt, launch businesses, build emergency funds, save hundreds of thousands of dollars, build stronger relationships around money, and finally master one of the most feared words in the English language, learning how to budget successfully, and so much more. Welcome, Shannah.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you here. So one thing that I am just loving about doing this podcast, and I'm sure you feel this way too, is meeting people like you. I mean, the opportunity to meet and actually have a 45-minute conversation with somebody that you didn't know and who you found out is so cool. So I'm kind of giddy when I come in to do these conversations with a new person who I haven't met. So thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it is so much fun. I totally echo that sentiment that having conversations and meeting people that you wouldn't probably normally meet, but somehow you pass in this really cool way and you get to hear each other's stories. I mean, to me, it's just so exciting.
Yeah, it really is. And honestly, I've been introduced to people that I've already admired and also new people, and now I'm following so much of their work that it's just it's so much fun, and I love learning, so that part is also a big bonus. So do you want to just give us a little background on how I don't know much about your history before this, so how did you get here? Were you always interested in money?
Yeah, it's such an interesting question. I think, like most people, I had a very windy road, a very windy career path. When I was 19, I started what was at the time the first National Student Film Festival.
Oh,
I went to school in the Midwest and ran that festival with a couple of other students for 5 years. Over 130 kids got jobs and internships in the industry. Many
wow.
now are famous actors, writers,
Oh,
editors, directors, agents, you name it. And we had entertainment guests out. One guest we had out is now the CEO of Disney.
wow.
So we had a lot of amazing things happen, and I ended up selling that about 5 years after running it to another Hollywood producer.
Wow.
And that was right at the time of the dot-com crash in 2001, 2002. So at that time, I was thinking, well, what do I do? All these kids got these amazing jobs, and I no longer own this festival, and I have all this weird sort of mixed bag of skills. So went back, got my MBA, and then my father, who's been in the finance industry his whole career, had a small firm, and he said, "Hey, I'm kind of bored. Do you want to come and work with me and see if you like this?" So from day one, we were working with people who had, massive net worths, $100 million plus. And it was a real sort of eye-opening experience for me. But I always tell people I'm this weird mix. I'm like half, financial expertise and then half creative. And it's sort of always a duel
Hmm.
of which is going to win out. But I really do love teaching about money, writing about money, speaking about money, bringing a voice to all the topics that you talk about, particularly our relationship with money, which I think is a piece that we don't talk about a lot. And so, I've taken this sort of weird mixed bag of skills throughout my career and kind of put together something that maybe doesn't look like our traditional financial planner career, but really has worked for me and lets me have a lot of fun.
Yeah, I love that. And I think you not being a traditional financial planner is what I really loved because, you're not, from what I'm hearing when I listen to your podcast, you're just not just about money and wealth building and retirement. I mean, you really, there were so many kind of holistic aspects to what you do. And I love that. And I do think building a business is an incredibly creative endeavor. And so I love that you bring that creativity into it.
Yeah, I think the whole holistic element about money is, I mean, it's certainly being talked about now more than ever. But if you go to a traditional financial planner, you're likely not going to have that piece of the conversation. And what I saw from being a certified financial planner, working with people for about 12 years, all different demographics, all different incomes, was that there are these similarities between all of us that exist. And it started to really have kind of like these aha moments for me that people really struggled with their relationship with money, no matter how much money they had or didn't
Mhm.
have. People really struggled with the mindset piece around money. And then when they could put these like pieces together that were sort of the more mental health, self care, those sort of practices, that was really when, if they applied like the money tips and tricks and all the things that you would normally go to a financial planner for, that all started to work. And it
Mhm.
really wasn't until they had taken care of this other piece and looked at money, looked at their relationship with money and their past with money, that it was kind of like putting the puzzle piece together. So, I really focus on that first, like those pieces of the puzzle that are really impactful, that are going to help make everything else really work.
Right. Right. And it is so interesting to me because you're getting me to reflect back on like my first meetings with a financial planner decades ago.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm still with him. He's a great guy, but I think about how that conversation was kind of in a vacuum. It's like, here's the money you need to retire here, without any real conversation about, well, how is that going to happen? I guess the inherent idea was just you figure it out, you get whatever job is going to make you enough money without any real regard to, do you like it, are you happy? None of that. It's just figure out that piece to get from A to B. And there really wasn't a conversation around that. And I think it's very interesting, you coming from this millennial perspective, because I'm a little older and I've been doing a lot of thinking about this. And the perspective that my generation grew up with, it was much more a result of having parents who'd been through the Depression and the World Wars. And, so there was a very different mindset. And I'm curious about what you see, because millennials have their own set of beliefs and issues that come from a different era. But what do you see with them?
Yeah, I am I guess I would say I'm right between Gen X and millennial.
Okay.
So I call myself sort of the millennial big sister, if you will. I'm kind of in that weird zone where depending on what study you look at, I'm one or the other. So I talk about millennial on my podcast as a frame of mind, a way of thinking. So rather than an age, I talk about it as a way of thinking outside of a traditional box,
right?
Of looking at life from a different perspective. And I think that is really what the millennial generation has embodied. Many of the younger millennials have grown up with cell phones and internet and email their entire life. I mean, I still remember a time before all of that, and can argue that maybe it was a little bit better. I don't know. But so millennials have really lived through this ginormous shift in just how we operate on a daily basis. And because of that, I think the millennial generation is really interested in just bucking the norm, and not just for the sake of doing it, but they're actually looking at things from a different lens. They're looking at something, as simple as like a bank. Well, do I really want to be with that bank? They charge me fees. There's no personalization. Okay, now there's all these other banks that have come up and there's no fees and I can talk to people and it's technology friendly. Okay, I'm going to go over here, right? So they're really kind of the trend leaders, I think, in this modernization of money that we really needed to do for quite some time. So to me, it's really interesting to see how money has shifted even in the last 5 to 10 years. I think there's been some really big shifts. And I think that the millennial generation has really been on the forefront of demanding change.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's really interesting. I feel like kind of the generation that I was talking about grew up with so much fear around money. And you just sort of lived your life trying to manage, the money potential catastrophes. And what do you see in terms of just mindset? Do you see that kind of fear or do you see something else going on?
I see a lot of fear. I mean, I think fear is unfortunately going to exist for quite some time until we figure out a way to really talk about mental health from a normal perspective, that this is something that most of us deal with. I mean, if we look at millennials, the majority of them have graduated with massive student loan debt. So you're coming out of college and you've got somewhere between, say, $30,000 to a couple $100,000 of student loan debt. And that is scary. And we're not teaching about money in school. We're getting a little bit better about it, but we're still not where we should be. So, we've got this massive generation that is also set to inherit the largest amount of wealth transfer, that we've seen in quite some time. And there is a lot of fear with millennials. And I think with that fear, though, has come the questions of why do things have to be this way? Right. Why can't they be different? Why do we have to just sit by and accept this? And, there haven't been massive changes, but I think that millennial generation is one of the generations who, yes, they are absolutely rooted in fear, but they're also looking at the other side of that question saying, okay, there has to be a better way to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love this. And I have also a daughter who is a Gen Zer, and if that's a word, and I see a lot of I see a lot of issues with that crowd, but also fear around money. And a girlfriend of mine who has kids the same age, she just called me and she said, my kids are working so hard. One is working a job where you get paid double time, and they're doing overtime all the time. And so he's socking away all this money. He's too busy to actually spend any of it anyway. But they're afraid to spend. So they are earning and they are out there working, but spending, they're not even spending it on just having fun. It's kind of like this mentality of I've got to make as much as I can and I can't spend it, which is, it's great to save, but there's that unhealthy opposite extreme.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that I see that as well. I see a lot of millennials being very conservative and the Gen Zers being very conservative as well. And I think it's a couple of things. I think one is we've always lived in somewhat of a money scarcity society, but I think it's even worse now with social media and technology. We're acutely aware of other people that have more than we do, or at least appear to have more than we do.
Yeah.
And the media's message is always, more, more, more. You got to be better. You got to have more. And I think it's just, I think that's really leading the movement of poor mental health, of fear, of anxiety, of depression around money. We look at those statistics; those are not getting any better. So I think this generation is just trying to figure its way through all of this, and it just doesn't know how to do it. I think they also, a lot of the millennial generation graduated right around 2008, 2009, when we had, of course, that massive downturn in the market. And they saw maybe their parents losing jobs, maybe they couldn't get a job. And I think that is just like shell shocked a lot of millennials into thinking, I can't trust the markets. I don't know where to put my money. Yeah. I'm just going to hold on to it. And, from a money perspective, that's, like you mentioned, there's that tipping point that exists there. And so it's, I think there's just a lot of unknowns with younger generations of trying to just figure this all out.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think because the older generations have such a different mindset that sometimes we're not, I think I'm helpful because I'm in this world, but a lot of older people are, how do they help younger people when they're coming from a completely different place? I think people really have to be careful of their own money mindsets and their own beliefs and habits, kind of being the content for their advice giving. It's complicated.
Yeah, very much. So I have a father who's, my parents were older when they had kids, and I'm the youngest. So he's in his 80s now. And we will drive by, say, like a gym, and it'll be midday, and he'll say, why are all these people at the gym at 12 or 1 o'clock? I'm like, Dad, well, there's just a different way that people work these days. Younger people have side hustles, or they'll work different hours. And it's like it just can't compute in his head. So, yeah, we have these vast differences in generations, and largely because of technology and how technology, I think, has really changed everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And, as much as we talk about the mental health issues and things that have come about, one of the positives is that you can have side hustles and you can earn money. I love the idea that if you get laid off from a job, you're not just stranded until you get a new one. You can drive an Uber, or you can sell something online, or, to me, that's a godsend. So that is one of the highlights, I think, of some of the technological changes. So let's talk a little about, you teach a class in financial literacy, and are you teaching that to students at Northridge?
Yeah, I'm teaching that to undergraduate students. Most of them are first generation.
Oh, okay.
So they're taking what they learn in class and taking it home to their parents and their families and teaching their siblings. Nice. So that's really exciting to see that happen. But Cal State Northridge came to me, gosh, now almost 10 years ago, and said, we want to teach a class. We have no syllabus. We don't know what to teach. Just create whatever you want. And I had no intention of being a professor. Just sort of fell in my lap. But I thought, okay, let me construct a class of what I would have wanted to know at, say, 18 to 21 years old. And let me do it in a way that I would have wanted to learn. So we actually don't use a textbook. We use blogs and podcasts and articles and just YouTube videos and all sorts of different resources. And my intention is that at least if they walk away with one little nugget that they carry forward in their life, that will probably be more than a lot of people learn about money at that age. Yeah. So I just try to make everything really realistic for them.
Right.
So it's tangible.
Oh, I love that. And what would you say are, I mean, as you were putting this together and as you continue to do this course, what do you think are some of the fundamental pieces that people really do need to know?
We spent a lot of time on the correct way, so I'll say, to budget. We talk about cash flow and how important it is to manage your inflows and your outflows. And I want them to be able to look at their money flow from a healthy perspective, one that isn't fear and anxiety driven. I want them to be able to see opportunities for change without having to earn more money. So I really, we do about 4 or 5 classes on that. And every time I think it might be too much, the students are like, no, tell us more. So that, and then of course, they always want to know about investing, and they always want to jump to probably, I would say, risky stock investing or cryptocurrency. And I'm like, whoa, we gotta back up a little bit. Right? We gotta build a foundation first before we get there. So I would say those 2 things. And then they're always, the students are asking really smart questions. They're trying to figure out, a lot of them have jobs with employers that offer 401ks, and they're trying to figure out, like, how do I maximize this at a young age? How do I find little opportunities to save money? So they really ask smart questions, and they really want to be able to graduate and feel like they've got some sort of life skill they can use.
Right. That's great. I love that, because I do think so much more should be taught, before you actually get into the work world. And as my kids tell me all the time, we need to learn from our own experiences, Mom. So, so some things, like, I set them up, or actually they set themselves up with my guidance, but, because everything's so technological now, they were actually much better at doing this than I was. But at least I gave them the direction to set up some investment accounts. And so they both started, and I think at the beginning of COVID, maybe a little earlier, they were playing around with different stocks. And one after the other came and said, I asked them about their stocks, and they said, oh, I took all that money out of stocks and put it all into some crypto, a variety of cryptocurrencies. So, they're young, they can see how that rolls, but and maybe they'll get rich, and I'll be waiting for my stock portfolio to perform.
They can take care of you.
Yeah, exactly. So how, I recently had somebody on who at a very early age was living very frugally and was saving and investing and ended up at a young age with a lot of money, with the intention that he could not worry about money. That was a big intention for this. And another intention was to be able to kind of do whatever work he wanted to do. And he was also a blogger, and, just to not have to worry about that salary issue. So it was interesting, because kind of gave up a little bit on the front end in terms of having fun in his early 20s to make a lot of money. And, he's very secure and happy in what he's doing now. I don't know. Do you have any kind of life advice around these things? Or that actually wasn't going to be my question, but I'll ask that question and then I'll ask the one that I was going to ask.
I think that's a great story. And I hear that story on my podcast from people in lots of different situations. And I think, to answer it really for yourself, so much about money, I call it the gray zone, right? There isn't a right or a wrong answer per se. It's what's important to you. What do you want your life to look like? And I think it's really easy to just kind of go along and think, oh, I'm supposed to do all of these different things. But as you mentioned before, do I like them? Am I good at them? Do I want to earn $1 million, or is $100,000 or $50,000 enough to fund my lifestyle? Those are really personal questions. So I think we need to spend some time thinking about, just like we did when we were teenagers and we got out our vision boards. Really, there's power in that. So what do you want your life to look like? What is that? What are all of the different areas? And really think about it for yourself. Where do you want to live? What type of career do you want to have? What do you want to do for fun? All of these different elements, really think about those. And once you have that, I call that like your GPS system for your money. Once you have that, then you can back into, okay, what are the goals to make these things happen? And then what do we need to do with our money in order to bring that into reality? So I think spending some time and thinking about, is that the version of life I want to have? I think that's the beauty of life, is we get to create it. And sometimes we get stuck, and I'm definitely guilty of this myself, thinking that we can't autocorrect or make a U-turn, but we can.
Yeah.
So I love stories like that.
Yeah, I love them too. And I love what you're saying about just making it really authentic, which I believe in the career realm, and I believe in the money realm. And despite the fact that there are a lot of experts out there who can, create a formula for you, there's so much emotion around money. And if that's not really who you are, you're not going to do it anyway, which, is a really interesting thing about money. You can know a lot, but are you doing it? And that's kind of your indication as to whether that's aligned with who you are. And, you can.
Yeah, 100%. I always tell people that there are certain money experts out there, we won't name names, where they want you to go down a certain checklist.
Yeah.
And although some of those things are good, yes, for everybody, there is not this checklist for perfection when it comes to your money. That's what makes it confusing, but that's also what makes it amazing.
Yeah.
So it's, which side are we going to lean into there? And you hit the nail on the head with being authentic. I always say I want to create this global movement of authenticity where we all can be our authentic self in whatever different version that means, and then let our money come aside that to bring that into reality.
Ooh, I love that. I love your authenticity, because you can just feel it and it's real. And I think that appeals to people who are trying to do something that for a lot of people, is difficult. And so if you think of money as sort of this challenge that you have to manage in your life, and I do know a lot of people who feel that way, who just feel like, I don't want to deal with this. This is something I'm not good at. I don't even want to know about. I just want to avoid it like the plague. And I like what you're saying, that, money is your support system for your dreams and goals. So money can be your ally, your friend. I mean, it really should be there to help you. And not to, I think people have this sense of conflict and like it's working against me. It's keeping me from being able to, do what I want to do. So it is an attitude shift, as well as the idea of, can I save? Can I invest? Can I budget? Those are all things that are interesting too, because you can come up with a lot of reasons why you can't save, for example. I was thinking about this the other day because depending on who you are, and I know my money archetypes. I have an assessment I do with people, and I know that I am primarily sort of a nurturer, caretaker type. So would I be able to come up with a couple $1,000s a month for something for my kids that was important? Yes. And then if they didn't need that in my regular life, I would be thinking that I didn't have that money. So it's an interesting thing that somehow you can magically find it or figure it out when it means enough to you. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on how that works.
Yeah, that's such a great example. I love the archetypes. I've really gotten into money archetypes lately. And I think this all comes back to something I talk about, which is your money story. So it starts with how you were raised. And there's a statistic that says that our money personality actually was formed by the age 7, which is crazy because I don't really remember anything
Sure.
before age 7. But to think about the power in that, so however you were raised, the environment you're in, how money was talked about, how money was exchanged or not talked about, definitely had a very impressionable impact on you, usually an unconscious sort of bias to money. And so I think having these conversations with yourself, I often tell people to start with this question seems very easy until you start diving into it. But how does money make you feel? And when you really start deep diving into that, you can really uncover a lot of things. Okay, oh, money makes me feel this way. I want to just curl up in the side of a room and vomit and not face it. Okay, but why? What happened? You know, we don't just kind of come out of the womb with those sort of biases to money, but why did this happen? Well, this happened in my life. This happened in my, okay, all right. So let's look at those, you know, so when you really start to back into it, and I say, like, tell the story of money, then you can understand, this is the reason why maybe I don't like to look at my bank account or why I'm afraid to start investing. So then once we have that awareness piece, then that's the place that we can start to cultivate change from. But we really have to understand this about ourselves. And it's super important just for yourself, but really important if you're in a relationship with anyone, because you're both coming in with this and trying to figure this out. So we got to understand both people here in order to make this thing at least remotely work.
Right. Yeah. And there was a statistic I had that I've probably forgotten, but I think money issues was, and I don't remember, you know, where I read this now, but it was, according to this study, the number one like indicator of divorce. So it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah.
I believe it. I when I was working with people, again, regardless of age, income, demographic, you name it. I mean, I was more therapist than I was actually financial planner. So, you know, I really got to understand, okay, there's a lot of power in this piece because there are a lot of emotions. And if we're not talking about money and we're not having these conversations, and if we're certainly not doing it from a positive perspective, there's a lot of charge behind this.
Yeah, and it's easy to blame the other person for the problems. So
yeah, you spent what on what?
I know. Yeah. Now, one of the things that I like to talk about is dating your money, because I like to compare it with another relationship, getting to know it, getting to understand it, spending time with it, so that you lose that, you know, kind of fear. And what, you know, as somebody who recommends regularly spending some time with your money, what are some of the things that you would suggest people do?
I love that. I'm a big fan of dating your money. I have a calendar date every week for a half hour that I have blocked off, and that is literally what I have to do in order to form that habit around it. Feels weird if I miss that time frame now, but for me, I always suggest looking ahead, the week coming up. What's coming up? Is there any extra big expense coming up? Anything you need to shift around? Look at the week past. Is there anything I want to maybe make a change on? Want to set a boundary around? Maybe I'm a little going kind of crazy on eating out. Am I okay with that? Am I not okay with that? And then just checking in with my goals. Where am I at? How am I progressing? So I think when we can have that awareness, we can date our money and we can be involved with it, it does take away some of the fear and anxiety, because again, it's this awareness point. It's funny that you mentioned that, because I had pitched a talk once to an organization about falling in love with your money. And they said, oh no, you can't possibly think that. You can't possibly say that. And I'm like, no, that actually is true. Like to some extent, we have to fall in love with where we're at without changing anything. And it's just like you were saying, it's just like dating a partner. We have to have that euphoric phase in order to go, okay, so here are some things I maybe need to shift, but here are also some things that I'm doing well, some things that are good.
Right.
And I mean, I think that's all such an important piece.
It's so important. I couldn't agree more. And just having some gratitude around wherever you sit. I mean, it could be pretty bleak, but there are still things that are, you can find gratitude and appreciation for, which I think is a very important sort of place to put yourself in as a sort of launch pad to making things better. There was something you just made me think of that was so interesting. I love that you put that on your calendar. I do it too. And yeah, it really, oh, I know what I was going to talk about. There was a point before I did this where I was not in a good place financially, despite knowing an awful lot about finances. I'd gotten myself into a pretty bleak situation myself. And so what I would do is just push everything aside. I wouldn't open the American Express bills. I wouldn't look at things. And it just, of course, that build up, then you just worry. And so you had create this horrible situation in your imagination. And I really learned very quickly that just ripping those envelopes open and looking and, just accepting whatever is, it actually, the reality was usually better than what was going on in my head, which was far scarier. So I think it's really important to face up to whatever it is, just like you're saying, and then you can start dealing with it. Then you can start looking at your situation and how to improve it. And if you need to get help, you can get help. But you'll be able to figure things out on your own as well, just by looking at it. If you don't look at it, you can't ever do that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's so true. And I've been there myself. I share very openly on my podcast. I made all the classic right moves with money out of college, and then got a divorce in my early 30s and lost everything, and had to start over with lots of debt.
Yeah.
And that was quite an experience. So the reality is that all of us go through bumps.
Right.
All of us have things we don't want to deal with money. All of us lose money or make a mistake. I mean, this is just human nature. So, but because we don't talk about it, we kind of stay cocooned,
right,
and think that we are unique, that we have made an original mistake or error, and so not the case. But you're right. If you don't open the American Express bill, then you can't do anything.
Right.
You're taking all of the options off the table. So sometimes, at least in the beginning, it's a little bit like the Band-Aid effect. We just got to kind
100%.
of keep pulling it off, and it does get easier. But it's also impossible to say that you're never going to fear money, that you're never going to have anxiety about money. Those things they're not going to go away 100%. So I just find it is a daily practice. It is a daily mindset. It is those daily check-ins on gratitude and remembering what went great today, and tomorrow might not be so great, but it brings it back to mindfulness and staying present and staying fixed in today. And when I do that, I know that things do get better, even if the situation doesn't necessarily improve.
Right. And it's so important to know that you can get through those times, because life is life. I mean, if you are lucky enough to keep living, then things are going to happen, and life events are going to happen that impact your financial situation, both positively and negatively. So it's something where you want to gain the confidence that, okay, something can happen, and I'll have the resources and awareness and knowledge to take care of it because of some of the experiences you've had in the past. So I think that's really important to go through that. And, it's just like any other life experiences, you just learn from them. So I see it kind of like riding waves, and you've got to be able to do that so you don't drown. But I'm curious, in your classes with the younger folks, do you help them understand how maybe their parents' beliefs and things like that are impacting
Absolutely.
them?
Yeah, we spend a couple of classes talking about mindset, talking about story, and I don't always know if it totally resonates at that age, but it gives them something to think about. And my hope is that over the years they come back and remember that. But yeah, we do exercises. We do a lot of the pieces from the Money Mindset Journal with the students to help them really understand. I have an exercise called Your Money Timeline, where you identify the good and not so good things that have happened in your life thus far, so you can kind of around money, so you can kind of visually see this.
Nice.
So all I want is just to kind of crack open the door with them of thinking about that this might be a component of money success, and maybe I need to spend a little time thinking about it.
Yeah, I love that. And how do you feel about choosing a career? And I know you're an entrepreneur. You said you've been an entrepreneur the whole time, which also has its wonderful aspects, but definitely its ups and downs, particularly with respect to income. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, being an entrepreneur is not for the faint of heart. Particularly with money. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. You gotta be a little bit of a risk taker.
Right.
But I think with career, it's coming back and having those conversations with yourself. What am I good at? What makes me excited? I don't like corporate buildings. They give me kind of the heebie-jeebies. But some people love that. Some people need that environment. And so just because I'm an entrepreneur doesn't mean that you can't be this super successful corporate, whatever that might be. So I think it's really just uncovering, what do you love? What sets your soul on fire? What gets you motivated to get up every day? And chase after that regardless of the income. The income will come if you're in your genius zone, your genius area. The income will come and support you. I think too many of us try to wedge ourselves into a job because we think it might be high paying.
Right.
And then we're in it and we're miserable. And now we've spent 5 years in it. Do we start a new career over? And, all of these decision points. And so I'm hoping that we can start to get generations that are, young 20s, whether they graduating college or not, but that are saying, you know what, that sounds interesting. I'm going to go try that. And if I don't like that, I'm going to go over here and try this. And to me, I think that's what's really exciting about younger generations is I'm seeing them do that.
I agree. Yeah, I totally agree. And I love that. And I love the reminder that, because, there is still information out there telling people, these are going to be the top 10 highest paying jobs coming up. And, so people feel like, okay, I have to pick from that list of 10, and that's not true, but it feels that way a little bit to people. So I love your advice to, go with what's meaningful to you. It's more just the authenticity piece. Do you want to talk for a minute about your journal? Because I love journals, and I saw that you have one, and I'd love for you to just describe that a little so people can know about it.
Yeah, so it's this beauty here of 300 pages. It's a 6-month journal. It's called the Money Mindset Journal, and it walks you through the practice of your money story, your money timeline. There is my unique way of, I have a cash tracker, so rather than a budget, I have a different formula to help you. But it's really rooted in these daily pages, and they're very simple. In less than 10 minutes a day, we're focusing on gratitude, moments of awesome. We're checking in how we're feeling. We're setting a daily goal and some action steps. We have infused in here lots of unique quotes. We have some fun money truth or dares that pop up. So it's just, to me, a real holistic way to think about money and life and to look at it from a little broader perspective that isn't just so rooted in the numbers, because we can figure out the numbers piece once we have really cultivated healthy habits, daily habits around really our life.
Right. Oh, I love that so much. And I know for a fact that if somebody were to take 10 minutes a day and do that journaling work and set themselves up with a foundation of positivity and intention around money, things are going to dramatically change. I mean, there's no question in my mind about that. So
I 100% agree.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you. So that is a great thing. Where can people find that journal?
Sure. It's sayhelloitsme.com is our website. Our company name is Hello It's Me. And we have a digital and print version of the journal and just some great resources that come along after you purchase one to kind of help you figure this whole thing out.
Yeah.
But it's already changing lives. And I've been doing this practice myself for well over 10 years before this was a physical product.
Yeah.
So I fully know it's simple, it's easy, and yet it's very effective.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you so much. And how else can people find you? How can they listen to your podcast, which is great? I would highly recommend it.
Yeah, my podcast is called Millennial Money, and it is on any podcast player of your choice. And we have over 700 episodes, everything about money for you to choose from. We would love to have you along on the journey.
That's great. Thank you so much. And I really, I believe in people really getting educated. I was a CPA and I got an MBA, but I'm learning more from podcasters and bloggers and people like you, certainly about personal finance, than I ever could have learned in school. So I say, it's really important to go out there and get this education and hear from people like you who are really doing a great job of making the whole financial thing fun and not, making it something that can be a really positive part of your life.
Well,
So
thank you for having me. That is certainly my goal. Let's have some fun.
yeah, that's great. Well, Shannah, thank you so much. I really enjoyed having you, and I will enjoy continuing to follow you. And I wish you all kinds of great success in the future.
Thank you, Michelle. I more than appreciate it.
Okay, well, great. Well, that was certainly she was a wonderful guest, and I do hope that you will check in with the journal and her podcast and anything else that she has going on. So I love finding people in the world who are really doing wonderful things to educate and to inspire people around money. So, keep finding those people. Keep listening to this show. And please share the show with your friends, anybody you think can use it. And we love to help people here. If you have questions, you can email me at michelle2ls@limitfreelife.com. I'd love to hear your questions, love to hear some of the topics that you like discussed on the show. You can follow us on all the podcast platforms. And if you follow us on Apple Podcasts, that would be great. And you can also find the YouTube version of the show on the Limit Free Life channel. So thank you so much for being here. We're here every week, streaming live on ubngo.com Mondays at 7 and then everywhere else. So have a great week. Oh, well, tough love money tip. I almost forgot. I'm so sorry. Every week we give you a tough love money tip. Again, if you do these tips each week, you're going to see a big shift as well. And I think I love what Shannah was saying about your money story. And so I'm going to leave you with really her tip, which is to sit down with a piece of paper and just literally write up what you think your current money story is. What's going on with you? How are you feeling? What are your thoughts around money? How is it making you feel? And what can you do, right now to look at that story and just figure out, is this the story I want to continue? Is this a story that needs to change? Do I need to write the next chapter differently so it takes me in a different trajectory? So I think that's a great tip. I don't know if you've done this before, but it almost doesn't matter. It's something to do every now and then. But go ahead and write your story and see if it's changed over the years. So, okay, that's my tough love money tip. I hope you'll do it. I think it's enlightening, and you will have some new insights and new questions even for yourself. So have a great week. See you next week on the Money and You Show.